Welcome to the ChangeMakers podcast, produced by City Current and powered by Higginbotham Insurance and Financial Services.
This show shares personal stories and insight from those who are leading by example, fueling positive change and making a difference so we can learn and do the same.
We cover life lessons, business advice, passion, and purpose.
Now here's your host, Jeremy Park.
Welcome to the ChangeMakers podcast, produced by City Current and powered by Higginbotham. I'm your host, Jeremy Park. On this episode, we're talking about family, faith, launching a school, football, and so much more. We're also tying in Higginbotham Insurance, and that's why we're excited to have with us Taylor and Carter English, co-founders of the Rise School of San Antonio. We'll talk all about that. Carter is the Chief Business Officer, Employee Benefits, and Managing Partner with Higginbotham Insurance. How are you two doing?
Good.
We're good.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Excited to see you, Jeremy. Now I'm fired up, honestly, now after that intro. So let's go.
Well, I have a chance to see you leading podcasts with Higginbotham, and we'll talk about all of that. But you two are doing amazing things. And so the fun of ChangeMakers is we get to know you personally and professionally. And so let's start with a little bit of the personal backstory. And Carter, let's start with you. Talk about your hometown, where you grew up.
Yeah, so born in Dallas, Texas. We lived in Jacksonville, Florida for like 6 years, and we moved back to Dallas. I went to Highland Park High School. Cool fact about me is that I am a son of the Republic of Texas, which means that I'm a ninth generation Texan. And every generation between myself and that first Texan who fought in the Texas Revolution, we all had to be born in Texas to be part of that. And apparently there's like 200 and something of us left. So there's a fun fact about me and being a true Texan. So
that's very cool. Yeah. Does that carry any sort of like traditions outside of that? Because obviously then that, like I'm just thinking, all right, we've got to make sure that, our next is born in Texas. We got to keep that tradition alive.
I've said that to Taylor a bunch, that all of our kids have to be born in Texas.
And I agree with that. And there is a Daughters of the Republic of Texas, and we have to do the papers for Isabelle. So we will make sure and do that. So we keep that going. It's important.
It's actually an organization, and there's paperwork, like you have to prove that that's true. And actually the Daughters of the Republic have, fun fact, they have actually run the Alamo for a long time. So, yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Texas royalty.
For you were a part of the state championship football team. So has football always been a piece of the equation?
Yeah, from like a family tradition standpoint, if you asked me like, what does our family do? I feel like it's pretty much football and hunting. That's like kind of the only things I really like can think about in terms of what our like childhood was really like. My dad's an identical twin. His twin played football at University of Florida. His son is a guy named Stephen English, who just started at Higginbotham last Monday in our Mississippi office. He played football at Florida. My brother played football at Oklahoma. My cousin on the other side, Clayton, played football at Tarleton State University. So all of us played football, and that was just kind of the thing. I mean, and then her brother played football at Texas Tech. So I think it just kind of comes with the territory with maybe with Texas too. So yeah,
Texas and football, those two go together. Yes, indeed.
No.
Well, let's switch over. Taylor, talk about where you grew up.
I grew up in the beautiful Midland, Texas. So very glamorous, mostly oil and gas. That's where the industry that I've worked in most of my life. Now I'm just a mom, but I worked in oil and gas for a long time. So I have all my family still, they've come full circle and moved back to Midland. I've toyed with the idea with Carter of, hey, you think we might ever move back to Midland? And he's assured me, no, we will not. But no, I grew up in Midland and then went to Texas Tech University for college. And I thought about running track there, but decided just wanted the college experience and ended up graduating in 3 years and got out into the real world and realized this was much harder than college. So, anyway, yeah. So then moved back to Fort Worth and have been here for a long time since. So, well, in San Antonio and then Fort Worth. So
when you look at Red Raiders and I know Horned Frogs on your end, any sort of rivalry between the two from a college standpoint?
I believe that it is easy. Texas Tech and TCU have not been huge rivals historically. So it was easy for me to jump in and be a frog. He didn't love that I was when it came time for Tech and TCU to play, it was not pretty.
Yeah, we won't go into the full story, but I'll just say that she wore a bright red blazer,
It was
and
just red.
it was maybe like the closest to a breakup that we've ever really
No, we
had.
did almost break up. And so, yes, I mean, I realized that red jacket actually, I think we might have burned it. I don't know. But anyway, I am an adopted TCU frog, horned frog. I mean, so it's, I don't, there's some
I've had to learn,
competition.
my wife is Mississippi State over and over again, undergrad, doctorate. So like I've had to learn to be a huge fan of Bulldogs and Mississippi State. So, it's just part of it. But
Yeah, I own a Texas Tech polo and a hat now, so I'm trying to meet in the middle here.
Well,
That's marriage, right?
Hasn't been good. I know, right? It's marriage. But yeah, Tech hadn't had a very good football team in a while, so I was like, let's go TCU. But no, we support both teams. So yeah.
What's a fun family tradition when you think about, growing up and just whether it's, a lunch, Sundays, like what's a fun family tradition for you when you think back, Taylor, on your end?
Well, fun fact for me is I'm Lebanese. So cooking, my grandmother cooks all the traditional Lebanese dishes and is teaching all the grandkids how to make those. They made us a cookbook. They hand wrote it, her and my grandfather, and we have all these recipes in there from our childhood. And so we're learning how to make those. And I can just remember, and still to this day, I'm with my grandmother in the kitchen and making all the things. So I love to cook, and I think I get that from her. So yeah, I mean, always Sunday brunches, and but also my grandmother lived. We literally lived. Our cul-de-sac was, or excuse me, our street was catty corner to hers, and so we could walk to her house. So it was fun because we were there all the time. So yeah.
So how did you two meet? And I'll throw it out to either one of you because this is where it gets interesting to tell the
So
story.
this is and I'll tell the PG version of this story. It's
PG.
The funny thing is the guy that introduced us also works at Higginbotham now, a guy named James Klein. So James Klein has known me my whole life. He was one of my brother's good friends, grew up in Highland Park. He married a gal that named Amy Tatum, who has known Taylor her whole life. And so shortly after James started at Hig, I had already been at Hig. He was like, "Hey, I've got this girl I want you to meet." Now, again, this was one of my brother's best friends, and so he pranked me all the time growing up. He was like complete jokester, still is. And I was like, "Man, I'm not gonna call some girl that you're trying to introduce me to. This is probably fake. I'm not calling it." Yeah. So I was like, I'm not calling. And so.
And I also remember so Amy's mom and my mom are best friends, and they had mentioned somebody, and I was like, I don't think that I want my mom and her best friend setting me up with somebody that's y'all don't know what I like, Yeah. So anyway, so I had heard about him, but didn't know anything, hadn't seen a picture, nothing.
Yeah, so I sat on that phone number for like 3 months, and James would come by and be like, "Hey, did you call her?" And I'm like, "No, and I'm never gonna call her. So stop asking." And eventually, I don't know why, one day I just finished working out, and I was like, "I'm gonna call that number." It was like a Saturday. I was like, "We'll see. No one's in the car with me. Like, we'll see what it is. I won't even tell James if it goes bad." Well, it turns out to be her on her 30th birthday in Mexico. So she was real chatty. She had a lot to say.
Okay.
And so like a week later, like a week later, she got back in town, and we went on a date. And our first date, again, I won't go into the full story of it, but it was pretty funny because it was like 2 p.m. We were just going to go get drinks, and that was going to be it. And then a group of my friends called and were like, "Hey, we're going to go to dinner." And Taylor was like, "Oh, I'll go to dinner." And so she goes to dinner with us.
He asked me to go to dinner. I didn't just volunteer myself. Yeah. However, I was like, "Yeah, we're having a great time." We enjoyed each other's company.
Yeah, and then that whole crew was like, "Oh, let's go dance somewhere." I was like, "I promise I can take you home." And she was like, "No, I can go dance." And so
who knows? He may have been like, "Let me take you." And I'm like, "No, I'm coming." He couldn't get rid of me. So
so like I ended up literally like I dropped her back off at home at like 2 a.m. And I remember getting home and thinking like, that was a 12-hour date. Like our first date was 12 hours, and she met like all of my friends. And so really, we'd say that we really started dating from that
From
first
time.
time because, after that, we pretty much hung out. I think we went to church like 2 days later with each other.
He invited me to church
Yeah,
quickly, and I was
yeah.
like, whoa,
Yeah.
let's pump the brakes. No, but no, it was wonderful. I mean, when you date or when you marry later in life, because we're older, you date intentionally. So things do move quicker. I mean, you're not trying to waste time. So yeah, I mean, I appreciated that he was like to the point and was serious about it. So
Yeah.
it was great.
Yeah, so
And here we
funny.
go.
And James Klein, who introduced us, he told me, he's like, my only rule is that if y'all get married, I get to come to your bachelor party. And so he ended up coming to my bachelor party, and yeah, it's pretty funny looking back on it now. We're like, man, what are the odds that, anyways, but yeah, it was funny.
That's cool. But I mean, I think I told my friends, because my wife and I were introduced by a mutual friend. So one of my friends from Texas growing up from Weatherford went to Mississippi State with Meredith. And I told all my friends, like, I'm going to know instantly the person I'm going to marry. And it's very similar, like, met her on a phone call. They were out shopping. And all of a sudden, then I see a picture. And then the very first day that I met her in person, I was like, this is the person I'm going to marry. So it's like, stuff like that, when it's meant to be, it's going to happen. So very cool.
Yeah, it's funny.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about, Carter, on your end, going from football and boxing, coaching, being, a part of the Miami Dolphins and working for the CEO, but then literally falling and tripping into insurance. Tell a little bit of that story and how you got to Higginbotham.
Yeah, man. Growing up in high school and stuff, I mean, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I went to TCU, obviously, and I originally thought maybe I'll be an athletic director or something. I always, again, love sports. Sports are a big part of our family, and I thought, maybe that's the path I want to go. And so I'll major in marketing, thinking, sports marketing, that sort of thing is kind of where my head was at the time. So as I kind of started to go down that path, I got an internship opportunity with the Miami Dolphins. It's a long story, but essentially I disagreed with our CEO, Mike D, in his very first meeting, and I was just like a lowly intern, and he liked it and agreed with what I said and gave me an opportunity to really become his assistant. And I've got some crazy stories from that time period. And I got super exposed to the world of sport business and an unbelievable opportunity. But I found really that the thing I enjoyed the most about football and even boxing and the things that I had a chance to enjoy athletically was I missed like the closeness to the players and the opportunity to impact players in a positive way. Coaches had been a huge part of my life and faith and character and all those things. And so I remember telling Mike, the CEO of the Dolphins, that, hey, I think I really want to coach. And so he said, look, you need to be happy with what you're doing, and I'll do anything I can to help in terms of good recommendations and recommendation letters and all. And he was really true and faithful to that. And so I kind of went back to the drawing board and said, okay, I'm just going to kind of throw it out there to anyone I can to see what opportunities might exist for me to coach. And so I truly wrote a letter to every single Division I football program, every NFL team, and the top 25 1AA and D2 teams, handwritten letters, every single one of them. So however many letters that is. And I actually kept every single no, because there was a lot of them. Everyone that wrote me back a no, I kept them. The first opportunity that I finally ended up getting came from Larry Fedora at the University of Southern Mississippi, who, full circle, he had actually coached my cousin at University of Florida for a little bit. And he said, hey, if you don't have anything else going on, I can't pay you, but I can give you somewhere to live and we can feed you and clothe you. And but if you want to come work here, then we'd love to have you. And at that point, I said, I'm going to go. And that's kind of how that industry works. I said, okay, I'm going to go try that. So moved to Hattiesburg, Mississippi, sight unseen, and just started coaching. Had a chance to work with running backs there. We had a lot of success that first year. I get hired at Northeastern Oklahoma after 1 year as their running backs coach. I move again, sight unseen, to Miami, Oklahoma. So I went from Miami, Florida to Miami, Oklahoma. Very different, not similar at all. Again, I remember showing up there and being like, well, this is the biggest mistake of my life. What am I doing? But I look back at that time, honestly, as maybe my favorite stop in coaching, just because, it's a junior college, so the players really needed you a lot. And I developed some really close relationships there. And even the small town kind of rallied around us in a lot of ways, and that was kind of neat. And then got the opportunity through Mike Schultz and Dennis Francione to go to Texas State University after only a year and a half at NEO. And went there, same type deal. I started out working with quarterbacks as a quality control and then got promoted to be the tight ends coach and then recruiting coordinator. And so I think at 25, I was the youngest Division I position coach in football. Everyone was kind of patting me on the back and telling me how great I was doing. But to be honest, I started to really look at my life and realize that if I continued down this path, I was probably going to end up being a pretty absent husband and father one day. And I wasn't married at the time, but just started to think, do I want to make that decision at 45 or at 25? And prayed about it a lot, talked to a lot of people. I talked to some really close mentors of mine that are guys that had been really successful in the industry, people that everyone would pat on the back, head coaches, offensive coordinators. And I said, hey, if you could go back in time and do this again, would you do it again? And every single one of them said, no, I wouldn't do it because I missed all my kids' lives. And I thought, if these are the guys that I'm aspiring to be and they're saying they wouldn't do this, then I'm the crazy one. And so really tough decision. One of the hardest things I've ever had to do is go in and tell Dennis Francione that I was going to quit. He was an intimidating guy to me at the time, but he walked around his desk and he gave me a big hug and he said, I love you. I'll hold your job for 6 months and you're going to do great at whatever you decide to do. So I moved back to Fort Worth, had no idea what I was going to do. Figured Fort Worth is where I had the most connections. Got hired at a small private wealth management firm here. Did that for like 6 months and I was miserable. I hated everything about it. And I thought, I'm going to go coach again. This is terrible. And coincidentally, Jake Kirkpatrick, one of my best friends from college, TCU guy, already worked at Hig. We went to, and I hope Rusty's cool with me saying this, we went to a bar after a TCU game, and Rusty's there because his son Charlie had just got done playing, and Charlie was there with his friends. And Jake was like, hey, that's our CEO. You need to come meet him. And so I go over there and start talking to Rusty. We connected that I had recruited Charlie at one point, who also works at Hig now. And he said, so what are you doing now? And I said, well, I'm in finance. And he said, do you like that? And I said, no, I hate it. And he said, well, you should come sell insurance. I said, that sounds terrible. No, thank you. And he was like, let's go to lunch and talk about that. So he convinced me to go to lunch. I think it was the next day. We went to Rivercrest with myself and him and Jake. And he just sold me on Higginbotham's culture and what the opportunity was. And my first 2 years, honestly, even here, I didn't really enjoy the work. I was kind of struggling to find purpose and passion. Again, back to the coaching thing around like, what is the purpose of my work every day? And coaching, I always felt this intense feeling of like, no matter what, I am here for the players today. And that's my ministry and that's what I'm going to do. And I struggled to find that. And Jim Hubbard, who's one of the founders of our benefits department, board member here at Higginbotham, I'll never forget, and this is some insight into our culture. I'm sitting on his couch and I'm complaining about my job. If you can complain to your boss about your job, it's a pretty good place. And he said, Carter, man, I think you're just kind of looking at this all wrong. Every day we get an opportunity to impact the employees that we work with, the employers that we work with, and the people that walk this hallway. And so every day, the decisions that I make help me minister to them by the work that I do. And the money that we make in this industry becomes the bank to do good with my church, my community, my family, my friends, and to be really generous in those places. And it was through that conversation and some other things in life that really made me say, okay, and Jake will tell you that that's when I really started trying and applying myself. And, not surprisingly, with effort came a lot more success and opportunities. And I had always told Rusty from the very beginning that the thing I cared most about was leadership and opportunities to try to impact as many people as I could. And so he started giving me some small opportunities and those started to grow. And long answer to your question, but that's kind of the...
Oh, yeah, I'm glad you did. And so a couple more questions and then we'll switch back over to you, Taylor, is one, when you look at your coaching, and even growing up, being coached, playing sports, football and boxing, for you now in this role, it's a lot of coaching. are there certain things, or do you ever catch yourself saying, "Oh man, that's what my coach has told me, and now I'm telling my team"? So talk about the influence of going from coaching to now really being a coach, but in a different mindset. So talk about kind of that
Yeah.
influence and how it carries over today with Higginbotham.
Sure. Yeah. Everyone that works with me would tell you that they hear my coaching sayings all the time.
The coach never leaves you, first of all.
Yeah.
It carries over into marriage. So
Yeah.
just FYI.
I can't tell you how many times she said, "I'm not one of your players. Stop talking to me like I'm one of your
I'm like,
players."
Well, in full
together.
disclosure, I fall into the same category because I
Yeah.
coached tennis, for a long time, and now I'm
Yeah.
volunteer coaching, the
Yeah.
varsity teams. So it's like
Yeah.
my kids, like everything. You're being the coach. Please stop.
Yeah.
I'm like, it never dies. It lives. It's in your blood forever.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So, it's really served me well. I think I use a lot of things. I mean, I can tell you some of them off the top of the head that I say all the time. Like, Francione used to always talk about the difference between coach speak and locker room speak. And so I always tell our leadership crew that, hey, when we're in the coaches room together, we can disagree and talk about everything in the world. But when we go out there into the locker room, we've got to be a unified front. We've all got to believe it. We've got to be on the same team, pulling the same way. Those types of lessons are things that I think about all the time. And really, I think in business and in life, it's at the end of the day, you're trying to do the same things. You're trying to establish a culture, point in a direction, rally the team around a common goal, and then do the best you can to kind of steward their lives every day around those things. And so I really don't see that much of a difference. And Rusty has even always told me that I think honestly, a lot of the opportunities that he's given me, he's said multiple times, the things that he likes about me, and I don't mean this in an arrogant or prideful way, is that the things he said he likes about me is the coach in me, that I want to coach people, I want to, establish a culture, and I love recruiting. I love trying to attract talent and surround, push us in a direction around a common goal. And so I love those things.
Well, and you said it too. I mean, you've mentioned leadership, that word, quite a few times. And I think when you look at companies are looking for leaders. They're looking for people who want to take action, who want to be a catalyst, who want to make hard decisions, but to get people going in the right direction. And I think that is exactly what he sees, what we see in you. And I think, when you talk about being a leader, that doesn't necessarily come at an age, right? That's taking responsibility, taking action. And so I think that's where a lot of this comes in, as being seen as someone who's going to make those hard decisions, do what's right, and lead by action. And that's been you through and through, which is why, you look at where you are today, it's easy to see. And so that'll carry us over into everything that you all are building together. One last question, then we'll switch over to Taylor. Talk about Higginbotham. So obviously we've been talking about it, but go ahead and tell the viewers and audience, what is Higginbotham Insurance and Financial Services?
Man, I think a uniqueness to Higginbotham, and something you would see if you were a prospect and I was trying to sell you insurance, I always just start with the story of who Higginbotham is. If you ever heard Rusty sell, it's so funny how it's not really a sell, it's just a story. And like when I talk about Higginbotham, I talk about how we were founded in the 1940s in Fort Worth, Texas by Paul Higginbotham. It moves on to his son-in-law, Bill Stroud. And then from there, Bill Stroud hands it to Rusty Reed, a 26-year-old kid trying to figure it out. And Rusty Reed, as employee number 12, made a couple decisions really early on, whether it be that he's that smart, which he is, or if he just was lucky, and it was probably both. But he made a couple decisions that I think are so integral to who Higginbotham is at that time. The first one being the employee ownership model and the humility to say, I'm the 12th employee. There's 11 others that deserve the same opportunity as I do to own this company. Not a lot of people in that same position would probably have that same humility and foresight. And then going and hiring his two best friends, and Michael Parks and Jim Hubbard, and saying, hey, let's be a full service shop. Let's do employee benefits and property and casualty and personal lines. And let's go try to build this thing that way with that kind of team selling mindset. Those two decisions became so important to just the core DNA of who we are, where we quickly become the fastest agency in the state of Texas. In 2009, we kind of launched that Best in Texas strategy, and and start really building out all of our day two services that allow us to be a better teammate to all of our clients that we ended up working with. And so, and I think when you look at our competitors and the competitive landscape that is the employee benefits and P&C space, the differentiators between us and the Gallagher's, Locktons, USIs, Aons, everybody else out there, to be honest, is less about like, can I check the box of do we do that? Because we can, but rather the who behind who's doing it. And when you've got employees that are all pulling in the same direction because we're all shareholders together, from the person at the front desk to the CEO owning the same share class, and you have that internal accountability and belief around our core values that aren't just things that sit on the wall, but rather that we talk about all the time. If we can align on that in terms of a business owner and a B2B conversation, to say no different than dating. I joke all the time that, like the first thing that takes you on a date with someone is typically like, are they attractive and I like their personality a little bit? But the things that carry you in through marriage and through some of the things we're going to talk about today are the foundational aspects of who are we as a people, and what are the things that we're aspiring towards, and what is our real foundation when things are not easy. And so if we can align as businesses around what are our core values and what's going to hold us accountable there, then we can figure out the blocking and tackling of the day-to-day, because we have all the capabilities in the world to do those things. So that's kind of my HIG elevator pitch. That's what I think really makes us unique in the marketplace. I could go on and on about different aspects of that blocking and tackling, but it's just an unbelievable company. And I've drank all the Kool-Aid and I believe in it, obviously, wholeheartedly. But I've told my friends, like, no, I truly believe you're making a bad decision if you don't work with us. Yeah. So it's easy for me to say that. Like, yeah.
And that recruiter in him, I'll tell you what, he's recruited a lot of people to work here. And I mean, of course, you can convince them to be here, but it's the culture that they realize that, yes, this is true. Yeah.
I tell people all the time, literally in sales meetings, I'll say, I think the best thing I can say about Higginbotham is that my wife says I'm not allowed to work somewhere else. So
there you go. Yeah, that's high praise.
Yes. I mean, they care about their people. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, talk about it from your vantage point, Taylor, because I mean, it is a two-way street. And when you talk about being successful, I mean, you have to have the support, and that will carry us over into the family conversation. But talk about your vantage point of Higginbotham, and then also talk about moving to San Antonio. So Taylor, give us your version.
So, I mean, I was a part of when he was trying to figure out if he enjoyed insurance or not, and what the purpose was in this, and how do you glorify God with this, with insurance, because you hear insurance and you think, blah, like so bland, like, I don't know, how are you supposed to, how does that look like Jesus, So that conversation with Jim Hubbard was a pivotal moment. And I mean, there was a shift in Carter that he found purpose in what he was doing. And I mean, I can remember a conversation that we had, this was while we were dating. I said, look, I don't care what you do, but I don't care if you scrub toilets, but you have to you find purpose in it and enjoy what you're doing, because if you're not enjoying it, then there's no reason to be doing it. So, however, the more that I was around Higginbotham employees and getting to know, I mean, Rusty early on, was very personal with me, and that was amazing. I thought that it's a huge company, and you don't typically become close with the CEO because they're busy, and you're just kind of a number at a company that's that big. But that is not the case with Higginbotham. And I was with Carter through COVID, and I saw how they took care of their employees through COVID. I did not have a great experience with my job with that, and so I thought to have a place that you have stability, they truly care about you and want you to succeed and are championing you. Especially when you're a hard worker like Carter, and he's very dedicated to helping with the success of Higginbotham. But I just thought, you can't leave. There's no other job out. I mean, try to show me another company that's going to do this, because I've never felt that stability in a job myself. And for me to feel that as the wife, and now having a baby, and there's a lot of things, you got a lot of factors in there. I'm like, we got to stick with them. They treat us like family. I mean, I feel like they are. And that's a wonderful feeling. Especially with all the things that we've already experienced in our short 3 years of marriage, which one being that we did move to San Antonio. Carter was presented with an opportunity which I'll let you say that part. I don't want to say it incorrectly.
Just to be a managing partner of Central Texas alongside Jake. So to run the employee benefits side of Austin and San Antonio.
Yeah. So it was, now I will say, that was a huge opportunity. Did I care? Not really, because I didn't want to go. And that was not a part of the plan. And when we got married, there was never a conversation about moving. So I thought, no, when he said it to me, I said, no, thank you. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go on with my life now, But as time went on, conversations got more and more serious. We got pregnant. And I thought, well, we're definitely not going now because we're pregnant, That was not the case. I went to San Antonio with my heels dug in the ground. I was not super kind about it. I did not want to go. And we were leaving our community, our family, our support system to a place where we had nobody. We had none of those things. We didn't know anybody that lived in San Antonio. So I'm like, you're not serious, right? Because I've seen how people rely on that support system when they have kids. So I wanted that. But anyway, we did have a conversation where I finally come to Jesus moment where I came to Carter and said, look, I will follow you because I trust that you are following Jesus. And so, I mean, begrudgingly in some ways, but I did get to a place of just like, look, I know that I don't want to do this, but I trust that you are following what Jesus has for us, So we moved to San Antonio. I was not happy in San Antonio for a little while. We bought our house sight unseen. Well, sight unseen for me. He had looked at it. I was like, I don't even care. He bought the house. It ended up being the most amazing home. We were there. I think we moved when I was 7 months pregnant, and it was very hot. Isabelle was born in August, so it was not a very fun move. But we get there, have new doctors. Don't know anybody. It's a very surreal experience when I'm thinking about it. But
it ended up being a blessing for us for sure.
Yes,
when we look back on it now, and obviously there's a lot more to this story that we're going to get into, but we look back at what started as a difficult spot as just a real blessing and somewhere we really enjoyed.
Pretty cool what God can do and how he can change your heart. And especially for me being the one that was not wanting to be in San Antonio. And so, it ends up being a good story or good ending to the story, but I won't go into it until.
Oh, and it's a story that continues. But I mean, one, thank you for your honesty, because I think that's a big piece of this, right? And change is hard. And when you talk about, just like you said, being pregnant and not having family around and going to a new city where you have to make new friends and a new sphere of influence, like that is scary for anyone. But also to have faith in both the opportunity and the company and what that will then entail, right? And so it's obviously a difficult situation, but having faith in the bigger scheme, in the bigger picture. And I think now when you look at it, just like you're saying, it's become a blessing for you and your family. And so talk about your daughter. Let's start there, and then we'll talk about the Rise School of San Antonio. So talk about Isabelle.
Okay. Well, Isabelle was born on August 23rd of 2022. I always get the dates mixed up but 2022. And we checked into the hospital at 2 a.m., which was awful checking in. That was the only time they had, but we checked in at 2 a.m. and we were excited and ready for her to be here. And I was in labor for a long 23 hours and was so ready for her to just come out. And she finally made her debut. And, before we had done all the testing and everything for, make sure she was healthy. We were told she didn't have Down syndrome. Everything checked out good. And I was also high risk. So I have uterine fibroids, which the blessing in that was we got to see Isabelle a lot more. So in hindsight, it was kind of a good thing because everything always checked out when we went to the doctor. It was always a good report. So when she came out, I was so exhausted and they laid her on my chest. And I just remember thinking, thank you, God, she's out and she's here. And Carter was the look on his face was very different. He was just sort of like he'd seen a ghost. And we, in that moment, were informed that she had Down syndrome. And it was the most devastating day of our life, honestly. I hate to have to admit that, but it's just true. It was, because the joy that you find in that day had sort of been stripped away from us, we felt like, because we were told she didn't have it. Now, it wouldn't have changed anything had we found out ahead of time, but just not being prepared. And, as humans, we have expectations, and when those aren't met, it kind of, shakes things up a little bit. And God's in control, we're not. That was a huge reminder in that moment. But we just hit the ground running with trying to. I was taking care of Isabelle. I was in that, just had tunnel vision of having to take care of her. And Carter jumped right into action and was learning everything he could about Down syndrome. And so we got more comfortable with the diagnosis. And
I would say, like, from my point of view, like, as she said, when Isabelle came out, I could see it immediately that she had Down syndrome. I could just see the features, and the first thing out of my mouth to the nurses, and I had seen them talk to each other, and they said, "Did the parents know?" And so I walked over there and I just said, "Is she normal?" And they said, "Well, were you aware she could have trisomy 21?" And that's really kind of how we found out. And so those first few weeks, I was completely broken. We were both unbelievably sad for her, and like, what does this mean for her life, and what does this mean for our life and our marriage? And you have so much unknown. And I think for us, the picture for both of us growing up was that if you had Down syndrome, you were like in the portable outside and in separate classes, and there was just so much unknown for us, and expectations that you have for your child. Unlike probably with a typical child, which Isabelle's our only child right now, there's going to be different times throughout life where that child's going to disappoint you, and there's going to be unmet expectations that cause grief inside of you. When you have a kid with special needs, there's a high degree of there's acute disappointment around a lot of things at once that you expected that are now most likely not going to occur. And so you're grieving all of those expectations that you had, and then you have uncertainty and fear around her life and her health, and what are all the things that this means. But to answer your questions of like, tell us about Isabelle.
Well, real quick before you, I just wanted to say that, yes, like it's the fear of the unknown, and the world doesn't provide any information to tell you differently. You can dig for it and do the research and find out more about it. However, it's just not readily available. And so, even when we had Isabelle, nobody was coming into the hospital room and telling us what this meant, or what, not that they could say what her life looked like. However, there was just no consoling in the sense of, look, the possibilities are endless. You just don't know. And just like any other child, we don't know what her future looks like. So you need to just take it day by day. There was nothing like that. And I think that that's just the culture of the misunderstanding as to what Down syndrome means, and what, again, like Carter mentioned, they were in a portable in the back of the school when I went to school. So I never interacted with them. So my discomfort that I feel today about Down syndrome and being around people that have it is because I wasn't exposed to it, which is what a disservice to do to everybody. Because I'll tell you what, Isabelle is amazing. And the joy that we did not find the day she was born, we're finding times a million today. And
like, it's so funny. Early on, there was a couple of people, and actually one of them that was really impactful was Hall of Fame football player Bruce Matthews, who his fifth child is a daughter named Gwenny that has Down syndrome. And through connections, he reached out to me and we had a conversation. And I remember Isabelle was like a week old, maybe 2 weeks old. And he said, Carter, you're going to think I'm crazy for saying this. But he said, and Gwenny's 18, I believe, maybe 19 now. But he said, if you asked me today if I could take Down syndrome away from Gwen, my answer would be no, because she ceases to be the daughter that I know and love. And that's how we feel about Isabelle now. I mean, Isabelle is like, to me, just the greatest thing in the world.
And she's just Isabelle. I mean, it affects Down syndrome is a part of her, and it affects every cell in her body. And if you take that away, you take away our daughter. And that's, we don't want that. I mean, she's wonderful, and she is teaching us more than we'll ever teach her.
Yeah, she's just again, like to bring it full circle to the question you asked, like she's just the most like joyful, happy, loving kid. If I walk in the door, if I call her mom, like she immediately goes, Dada. Like, she just like
Carter hung the moon. I swear it's the sweetest thing, the way she looks at him and how excited she gets when he walks in the room. I mean,
yeah, she smiles with her whole body. If you turn on any music, she's gonna dance 100% of the time. Like she's just the greatest thing ever.
And that relationship, I will say too, is that's something I didn't have growing up, and so it was very important to me and it still is for her for my daughter to have that relationship and to see that flourishing and to see the way that they love each other. And it's just it's just such a cool thing to get to experience and witness. So
so she's the best.
She really is. She really is. And honestly, we're grateful that she's healthy and she doesn't have any heart issues, which 50% of children do that have Down syndrome. And so God is, like I said, he's in control, but we're very grateful for all the wins along the way, and we'll continue to grieve some things. That's just the way it goes. But she's teaching us to be present and to be grateful for today being a good day and to celebrate everything, celebrate the small things and the big things. And, life moves very fast. So it's a very cool lesson. And I think a gift that God is giving us to slow down, because that's just not something that everybody has. I mean, life just moves so quickly. So I hope people see that and try to slow down and see that we celebrate sitting up or rolling over, which people don't typically do, and go, gosh, we should celebrate those things. So we're grateful for her. We really are.
Absolutely. So what led you to the Rise School model and then to co-found and launch Rise School of San Antonio?
So, first thing that we learned quickly was that early intervention is crucial for children with special needs in general, but definitely with Down syndrome, because that is going to give them the chance to, that is going to give them the tools needed to be successful in life and to reach their full potential. So Carter stumbled upon Easter Seals as the program in San Antonio that we've been with. I dreaded having women coming into my house doing therapy. And because I thought, I'm not a therapist. This is not what I asked for. Why, God? I didn't go to school for this. I don't know what I'm doing. So anyway, them coming into the house, I was not looking forward to. And I just felt like you already don't have a life. I mean, your life is your child when you're taking care of them. And now you have to add therapy on top of that. And it felt like a lot of pressure. So now that turned into, these women are some of my best friends now, and they have literally gotten me to where I am today as far as being a mom and being okay with Isabelle's diagnosis and knowing that the future is bright and everything's going to be okay. But Carter was very gracious to say, look, you need to have personal time too. And it can't just be about Isabelle because, for your mental health, which is true. So we found a daycare, we enrolled her, and I sat in on the classes several times and because they let me, and, I just making her comfortable. And I came home to Carter and I said, I appreciate the time that I have away from Isabelle. I think that's healthy. However, when I'm in the class, I just don't feel like she's just laying there. And I'm like, I feel like we're losing time, and to know that early intervention is so important and the therapy and working with her is so important that I just felt like I'd rather keep her home than take her and drop her off to a place where she's not getting, additional services or just, time is crucial. So, but anyway, so we had met some friends that had kids enrolled in Rise.
Some of my coincidentally, or God thing, however you want to look at it, like had been actually on the board of the Rise School in Dallas and had no real connection to Down syndrome or special needs. It just became something that they were a part of. And so they had reached out to me and been like, do you know about Rise? Y'all should think about moving or, whatever else. And then Jake Kirkpatrick, actually, I think was the first one that really said out loud to me, you should start a rise school in San Antonio. And I remember thinking at the time, heck no, man. Like, you know how much I have going on with work and stuff and being a husband and dad, like, ain't no way.
When he came home and presented the idea to me, I was like, this is not what I meant when I said she needs, okay, because you have so much time and we know a lot of people here,
Yeah,
right?
I
So it was
actually
like, how is this a good idea?
I think to quote her, I think the thing she said to me was, yeah, and what time are you going to do that?
Already he doesn't have, he didn't have time, but
So it was, we again prayed about it a lot. There's actually a verse in Genesis that made me feel like convicted, like, yep, this is what we're supposed to do. And so just started trying to pursue it and seeing like, all right, where does this go? So John Poston, who founded the Rise School in Dallas, which the Rise School was started first of all in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, by another football coach, Gene Stallings, who had a son with Down syndrome. And John was the first one to take it out of Alabama, and he brought it to Dallas. And John flew down to San Antonio, took me to lunch, and said, "Hey, I'll give you everything but the money. So I'll tell you the whole playbook. I'll tell you how we did it. I'll be here to be a friend and confidant, talk you through all of it." And he became, kind of a great first person. The second thing that gave me a lot of confidence was Clayton Kershaw, who's one of my best friends from growing up, the baseball pitcher for the Dodgers. He and his wife graciously said, "Hey, we'll fund the first teacher's salary." And so they were kind of our first donor that gave us something significant to stand on. And then we met Vanessa Hurd, who Vanessa was the founder and CEO of the Museum, which is the children's museum in San Antonio. That's amazing. And she had been on a 2-year sabbatical and was looking for her next project. And coincidentally, she had a son with special needs. And when we talked, she says now, she's like, I could see the look in his eyes that I remember being in those shoes. And she just said, okay, this will be my next thing.
And Rise is in every major city in Texas but San Antonio. So why?
Yeah.
Why is it not there? And that's because people don't say, let's start a school, because it's hard. I mean, it's not really an easy thing to do. So
the hardest thing about it is the money. It's an expensive model because the amount of therapy that's required for these kids is difficult. And so
I do 2 to 3 a day at home. So, I mean, that just tells you, and it's all necessary. So,
and so then, you start going down the path of saying, all right, how do we make this work, not only from a practical perspective, but also the financial. And like I said, those few things happened. And the last one that was really like, okay, yep, for sure, this is what we're going to do. The Children's Hospital there, Christus Children's Hospital, came alongside us and said, hey, we'll support you. We'll give you a building on our campus, and we'll also help with the therapist and overhead and all the other stuff. And so that made the financial model actually work now. If we could raise the remainder, because also subsidizing the education of the kids that couldn't afford it became really important to us. And so, fast forward, and I'm including part of the story that's closer to the end, but those kind of things were the first ones that made us say, okay, this is the model, and Rise School is truly recognized as the best-in-class model for early childhood intervention, especially for kids with Down syndrome.
So we didn't have to sell people on the model. It was just not knowing anybody and the credibility. We don't have credibility in a city where we know nobody. So that's the hard part, is how do you get people to trust you? I mean, people in San Antonio, that city, they are gracious, give a lot of money to different charities, but it's just, why give to somebody they don't know anything about? So Carter's he's been on that side of things and very convincing and charming and bold.
God's just made a way, no different than sales. It's building credibility. It's establishing expertise by having the right people in the room, proving that the model is the right one that works. And then, like I said, there was 2 things that gave us a ton of credibility from Vanessa, who had executed really well in the childhood space in the city, and then the Children's Hospital saying, hey, no, this is the best model, and here's a doctor in neurodevelopment that'll stand here and tell you that this is the best model. And so then it's like, I'm just the dad that has a story because y'all have the credibility, so that got us to that point. So
we're recording this on Monday, August 12th, and we're pretty close to kind of a grand opening. So talk about that moment and the future ahead?
Gosh, it's amazing and just still surreal that we're almost to this point. We're still holding our breath until we get there. I mean, starting any business is difficult. Things go wrong. It's crunch time, and you think, are we going to meet that date? And of course, with the school, it's so important because the school year starts and people need to start bringing their kids. So, but it's surreal and very cool, and we're just so excited. I mean, I quickly learned through Isabelle's therapist that with, we're very, like I said, we research and we're finding everything out that we need to know, and we want the very best for our child. Well, this is our first child. For a lot of people, it is like Bruce, their fifth. And a lot of parents that, like Carter said, that can't afford places like this, they have to work. I'm grateful to be able to be a stay-at-home mom. However, that is not the case for most people. Both parents have to work. So they're going to drop their child off somewhere, expect they're getting everything that they need, and then they're going to come home and it's going to start over. So to know that we are going to be helping so many children it's just the best feeling, because I think about Isabelle. She was the muse behind this, but this is for all these children in San Antonio that are going to benefit from it, and for these parents that feel the way that we do and have been in our shoes or are in our shoes. So we're just so excited. It's been a long road. So
my overwhelming feeling is like, honestly, just a lot of humility. When I look back at, it's been 18 months of work to get to this place. But like I said, so many things have fallen in line, and so many people have trusted us and believed in what we've tried to do and the vision that we have. Our entire board, Higginbotham, when you add together not only what has been given from the community fund, but through managing partners and managing directors and employees making individual donations, it's more than $500,000 that's come from Higginbotham, just from the philanthropic belief of that core value of being generous to our communities. When you look at some of the other partners that came along from an early side, whether they be companies or individual entities or family offices that said, yes, we agree, San Antonio needs this, to Chris's children, to Weston Urban. And there's been so many groups I can't even, our construction for the building on campus, the renovations need to occur. 90% of that was just donated by general contractors and construction crews in the city saying, we believe in this, and so we'll just do the work for free. The number of things that had to happen to get us to this point is just unbelievable. And I think it creates in us the humility to know that, gosh, we don't have to take credit for it, because it was truly just our daughter's story. And we're just really proud that one day, God willing, we'll be able to take Isabelle back there as she, is an adult and say, hey, this is here because of you. And because of your life. There's two things that Taylor and I always prayed for Isabelle when she was in her belly. We prayed, one, that she would know Jesus and people would know Jesus through her, and two, that God would use her to change the world. And I remember just being devastated when she was born, thinking those things won't happen anymore. Yeah. And we look at it now and we're like, wow.
Well, we had a conversation recently and we were like, that got answered way quicker. We thought all of our expectations were not met and that everything had changed. And, we're grieving the loss of this child we thought we were having, and we got this different child at the hospital. And it's like to come to the realization that, wow, you know what? God is actually answering these prayers. In full. And we're so grateful to be able to see this unfold, because you don't always, that there's a purpose in things, but you don't always get to see it play out. And so God's been really kind to allow us a front row seat to witness all of this. But yeah, he's answering those prayers. And she, again, I think that everything is happening the way that it's supposed to be. And it's better than what our plan would have ever been. And look at her and her inspiration has caused this to come to fruition. And of course, God has made it happen. But the way that people have responded to this and wanted to support it, whether they are affected by, having a family member or a friend or know somebody with special needs, whatever the case, it doesn't matter. They want to see these kids succeed. And so And that's all we want as parents. I mean, your job, you give your children the tools necessary to be successful.
One more question, and then we'll switch to a lightning round to wrap up. When you look at this experience, how has this changed your perspective about San Antonio? How has it made your marriage stronger? How has it made you, especially Carter on your end, a better leader? So how has this experience changed?
Start.
Sure.
Do you care if I start? Well, I just was going to say, because of my perspective of San Antonio being so negative, it's sort of it's a really cool story to see where I ended. But man, I'm not somebody that trusts people easily. So not having a support system there, finding out, getting this devastating news, feeling the most vulnerable I ever have in my life with having a new baby, and then with having a baby with a diagnosis I know nothing about. I was forced to rely on people that I didn't know. And man, God has taught me that there are good people in the world that want to help. And the people of San Antonio and the community there, they loved me where I was, and they waited for me to be ready to be more open and to open up. And that's it's the coolest thing to see that. And that community will be special to us forever. We'll have a bond with them that we can't gain with anybody else because of the experience that we had. And so it's been, I'm just grateful for God unclenching my fist and, moving us there. And of course, for our marriage too, I think that it was kind of like an incubator for our marriage when we first moved there, for what was going to be happening that we didn't know as far as Isabelle's diagnosis. But also, there's nobody in the world that understands what we're going through like each other. And we really, the day in the hospital where they said trisomy 21 and they said Down syndrome, and we turned into each other and just crumbled and cried and held each other. And it was like, there was just nobody that understood what we were going through like each other. So I think that in a lot of ways it strengthened it. And not to say that it hasn't been hard, because again, we're only 3 years into marriage. So a lot of ground has been covered in marriage, but yeah, I think,
from a marriage perspective, for me, my greatest hope in moving for our marriage was that it would be beneficial for us to go build something together. Like here in this life, and I didn't know how much of building we were going to really do, but like when we were in Fort Worth, I felt like so much of our life revolved around like my group and my community and my work and all those things. And so to go do this together, we looked at the work that we were doing in the office as building the office of San Antonio together, raising a family together, doing those things that were just us, apart from family and friends, and
not having other people to rely on, and really relying on each other.
And that's difficult to leave those things behind. But I think it taught me a few different lessons in life and work from being in San Antonio. One is just how amazing that community was and supportive the people were and are in San Antonio. Number two was walking into that San Antonio office at the time was a difficult atmosphere and energy. It was my first time to really be in a significant leadership role at Higginbotham. No different than being a head coach. I thought about like, hey, if I was the new head coach, how would I garner trust, and how would I serve these people in a way that is going to elicit trust and that they're going to want to follow me, and that we can kind of build something together. And so learning how to do that well, and how to lean on the expertise and skills that already existed there. We were fortunate enough that the San Antonio office for 2 years in a row has been the fastest growing office in Higginbotham. And again, I give a lot of credit there to just great timing for me to be there with the right people at the right time, that all those things work together. But then in terms of building the school, I think the skill set that I would say that I gained more than that is a deeper trust and belief in one of our core values of being generous to our communities. We've felt that more tangibly probably than almost anybody else at Higginbotham. I can tell you that I think every member of our board of directors called us within 48 hours of Isabelle being born. And then, you fast forward, the support that Higginbotham has given the school has been amazing to see that. But to start something like a nonprofit, it requires a tremendous amount of belief and buy-in from a community. It requires a lot of different constituents across from like the hospital to Vanessa Hurd and our founding director, to finding executive directors and teachers that believe and can deploy a vision, to construction workers, to family offices, to you learn you learn very well how to kind of spin a lot of plates at once and consider which personalities are in the room and how do these two people interact with each other, and
which is something he's wonderful at, obviously. So he's the right man for the job.
Yeah, so I think all of those things were really beneficial, helpful lessons when it comes to the rest of our career and work and things that we want to accomplish in life. Just like anything else, the best way to learn things typically is by doing. And so you just get thrown into it, and and it's worked out.
Well, and if we had found out about Isabel's diagnosis before moving, we would not have moved. We both know that. And so if we wouldn't have moved, Rise wouldn't be happening. So it was important for God we look at it like he sent us on a mission. And so the mission is still the same and just as important. And we are very involved in just championing and wanting to see this succeed and wanting all of these children to benefit from this. So yeah, I mean, it all played out the way it was supposed to. Again, San Antonio, so much happened in such a short amount of time, but had we not gone there, we wouldn't be talking with you about this. So there's a lot of purpose in Isabel's life. That's for sure.
Well, I love that word, purpose. So let's switch over and do a quick lightning round to wrap up. And so we'll let either one of you kind of answer however you want to do it. But what do you all like to do to relax?
My two favorite things for relaxing for me are I like loud music and lots of people, or I like hunting. Those are like the two things that they're complete opposites, but I feel like I can either rest in solitude or in the solitude of no one else is paying attention to me because there's loud music and a lot of people moving around. So yeah. And
I think for me, organizing and cleaning, which sounds so funny, but it's therapeutic. And then I grew up being a runner, running track. I mean, running is also therapeutic. I need to get back into that with having had Isabelle. It just, it's hot outside, and taking a baby in a stroller isn't that fun to run with. But
lightning round.
I know. Fast. So anyway, I'm sorry. Okay, yeah. So boom. Okay, next question.
What's a go-to date night?
Well, a go-to date night would be, we just had one on Friday. Friday we went on a date, and Teeny's is one of our favorite restaurants. So we came back and it was like we'd never left Fort Worth. So it was great.
When friends are visiting San Antonio, where do you like to take them in San Antonio? Let's start in San Antonio.
Saluna is a staple. We love, again, live music. So like Floors and Helotes was fun. Go to Bernie. But I would say like the first one every time is like, all right, we got to go Saluna.
Yeah, Saluna. Yeah, it's a staple. Yeah. So, yeah.
All right. So for Fort Worth, where do you like to go in Fort Worth? What are your go-to spots?
Oh, gosh.
I would say Teeny's, kind of anywhere on South Main. If it's football season, you're going to a TCU game. That's what we're doing, period, end of story.
Yep.
And then again, live music. So like Billy Bob's or, some of those places are always good spots. Joe T's is a staple. You've been to Joe T's. So yeah.
But now it's going to be our house because we live right next to TCU, and I've been assured that it will be a party for the football games every time.
That's right.
So that's great. I love to host, so it'll be good.
Yeah.
What is a favorite quote or saying that inspires you? And you don't have to get it verbatim, but what's something that inspires you as a quote or a saying?
One that she hates. I quote all the time, Yoda, do or do not, there is no try.
I'm like, come on, man. Really? If I have to hear that one more time, I swear. Oh my gosh.
Do you have a favorite quote?
I don't know. I just was trying to think of one.
The only thing I ever really hear you say is your grandmother's quote that you're nuttier than a fruitcake.
That's a good quote. Yeah. That's not my inspiring quote. I don't know. I'm not very good.
That's why I love this version, like these where you have the husband and wife on together. Yeah. So, all right. So one more, and then we'll ask the last wrap-up question. And I'll let either one of you decide who gets to go first. What's something that you've learned from the other? So Taylor, what have you learned from Carter? Carter, how has Taylor made you a better person? So what have you learned from each other that's made you better?
I can start with that. First of all, I'd say that just Carter leads me to Jesus, and I'm so grateful for that because no matter what we're in the midst of, no matter how frustrated we are with each other, he ultimately points us back to Jesus, which is his role as a husband, and he does that well. The other thing that I learned early on in dating was, again, it's hard for me to trust people. I don't necessarily open up about everything going on in my life because I feel like people don't want to hear about it. It's too heavy. He is encouraging of me telling my story and knowing that, telling me, look, other people can relate to it and you're helping them when you're talking about it. So he's my big encouragement and has made me more open with talking about things. So I'm grateful for that. Yeah.
I would say for Taylor, we always kind of joke that like I'm all truth with no grace and she's all grace with no truth. But like I think that aspect of Taylor has been helpful for me to not be so black and white about everything, to see more of the gray and to look for the good in people and to offer more grace when someone, makes a mistake or whatever else. And so I think she's grown that in me. Coming from coaching, so much of everything is like Coach Francione used to always say, she hates this quote too, but he used to always say, there's a difference between activity and accomplishment. So I don't want to see your activity, show me your accomplishment. And so I think about that all the time, but to be reminded to pause and slow down and think about, no, sometimes it's just about the activity. It's about the journey. It's about the thing you're doing as opposed to just the accomplishment. So,
which Isabelle is teaching us that too, which God, I think, again, he knew what he was doing when he gave her to us because she causes she's not a problem to solve. She is who she is. We just love her. That's our job. And to know that she'll get to from point A to point B when she's ready and just appreciate the, things along the way. So, yeah.
Well, you all are creating an amazing legacy, each and every day, and obviously together many years from now. And obviously Isabelle plays a key, role in this, just like you're talking about with the Rice School of San Antonio. But what do you hope that your legacy is here on earth many, many, many years from now?
I honestly think about this all the time, I hope that honestly in my life, I've done this actually at speaking to a team before, that if you look around a room and you tell people, hey, raise your hand if you know both your parents' names, pretty much everyone raises their hand. All right, keep your hand raised if you know all your grandparents' names on both sides. Maybe a few drop their hands. I'll say, all right, great grandparents. More drop, great. Usually at this point, everyone's hands are down because no one really remembers even the names of all their greats. So if that's the case, if within 3 to 4 generations, people aren't going to know who I am or what I did or why it really mattered, the thing that might be remembered or the impact that I could have ultimately is that I'm just a piece of paper in God's file cabinet, that he's not a file in my cabinet. And so hopefully we do enough things in this life that create ripple effects for generations further, regardless, and especially because they won't know who I am or who we are. And so if we can leave a legacy, one of faith and of caring, and of, now because the Lord saw it so fit that we were going to have a kid with special needs, now one also of inclusivity and caring for kids that are different than maybe what we pictured, then to me, that's a good and worthy endeavor. And I just hope that one day, and to a fault, that, when I'm done with this life, that I just am empty-handed, just like I gave it all. That's everything I had. I ran as hard as I possibly could, and I'm done.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I mean, when you have a child, when God graciously, he allows you to be a parent, you have this opportunity to raise a wonderful human. You're teaching them everything. They don't know anything until you teach it to them. So the legacy is that they're going to carry on, have children, and teach their children. And so just being good parents and doing everything you can for your child. And obviously not everything is in our control, but just like with the school and with wanting to give Isabelle the tools to be successful, if you don't advocate for them, who will? And, you just hope that your hard work carries over into how they raise their children, God willing, if they have children. So, you're planting seeds. Yeah.
Well, the last question is contact information. Where can we go to learn more? So in this case, talk about with Higginbotham Insurance and Financial Services, website, email, social media, whatever you want to throw out there. And then same thing for the Rise School of San Antonio.
Yeah, for sure. So, my contact information iscenglish@higginbotham.net. If you want to learn more about, whether it be Higginbotham or Rise, I can certainly point in whatever direction we need to there. Higginbotham.com is our website. You can follow us on all social channels to see what Higginbotham is doing in the communities that we live in, and often highlighting personal stories like this one throughout all of our social channels. And then at Rise School SA is the Instagram handle, or Rise School San Antonio on LinkedIn, where you can follow along with what's happening with the Rise School and our ribbon cutting on Thursday. But yeah, and then obviously if you follow either one of us on social media, you'll see a lot of Isabelle, and you're going to see a lot of Rise School. So sorry, don't follow me if you don't want to see it, because that's what you're going to see. So.
Well, and it's important to us to be a resource for parents. And again, if you follow us personally, or even, reaching out on Rise, we know that we want to, how we felt in our position, we want to be there as a resource to help other parents that may be going through the same thing, or feel alone. And even if especially if they don't have faith, they need somewhere to go, and we want to be that for them. So any questions or anything, we're still learning along the way, but we're open books. And so like I said, we want to be there for as many people as we can.
Well, Taylor and Carter English, you two are change makers indeed. So thanks for all you do to power the good. Thank you for coming on the ChangeMakers podcast.
Thanks, Jeremy. Have
a good one.
Higginbotham Insurance and Financial Services is proud to power the ChangeMakers podcast. We're a people-first company that protects what matters most, the families, businesses, and trailblazers that keep our community going. As one of the nation's top independent insurance firms, Higginbotham is a single-source solution for business insurance, employee benefits, HR services, and personal insurance that's customized for you. We're here to serve you, the people you care about, and your community. Call 866-377-1959 or visit higginbotham.com.